How is AI rewriting the lines of how we work? What can we do to mitigate burnout and stress in our workplaces? And will we replace the amount of time we spend at work with the help of generative AI? In this episode of SIME Perspectives, I meet Nina Rapp, a bold thinker reshaping the way we work. Nina, all things AI, right? If we look at the next 10 years, what do you think is going to happen? Maybe start small and go big.
I think it's very hard to actually think and project about 10 years because right now things are moving so fast. And I want to stop and pause and think a little bit where we actually are in time and why we're talking all about AI right now. Because I want to take an analogy of how fast things are moving. So for the internet, it took 16 years to reach 100 million people to use these services. And think today about a workplace not utilizing internet. Very hard, because it really shifted the way we're working. So AI is not new, but what happened the last 2.5 years is really that we reached 100 million people using generative AI in 3 months. That is now shifting the way we're working, and think about that timeline, that trajectory. Things are moving so fast right now that yes, we could think about what's happening in 10 years, but it's gonna be so big and so far off what people can really imagine and follow along with right now that I think maybe we should stay a little bit closer by, even though it will feel like 10 years, and I would say 2.
Right, because things are going at this exponential rate or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
then is the AI teaching itself? How does it work? Like how to make it go so quickly? What's behind all this?
It's a really good question. I think you have to see that there are different kinds of AI models. There are different kinds of AI. And what I work a lot with is the generative AI. The generative AI is the new AI, which is like 2.5 years old. It's the LLM models that it's based on. And really, why things are moving so fast right now, to simplify it a lot, is because yes, we're utilizing AI to do even more work, but it's also the high demand, the high investments that are happening right now, because this is so big and it really is reshaping the way we work so much.
You know, we're here in an entrepreneurial environment. There's loads of people who are like tech savvy, they know everything, but this is affecting kind of everyone everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So how does it work with terms of like, let's say, we think of things as tech solutions and all that kind of stuff, but how does it work in the human side? What's happening in that environment?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, because I think it's really important now to really think why we're talking so much about AI, because as I mentioned, it's not something new, but AI was a tech conversation, and how it shifted now the last 2.5 years is really that it became a people conversation. Because when we see this high demand, 100 million users in 3 months, that is rewriting the lines of what is work, how are we working, the definitions there, and then it becomes a people conversation. So I'm the AI at Work lead here in Microsoft Sweden, and for us, this is really a people conversation. We could talk about the cool technology, but actually when we can implement it and look at what are we solving, we can solve things like burnout, stress. We can empower people to focus on their human ingenuity, really, when we work differently together with AI. And on that note, I do want to call out that we really see 57% of information workers in Sweden are saying, I do not have enough time or energy to keep up with the pace of work.
Right.
I'm falling behind, I'm stressed. And we have seen a lot of people then leave their employers, struggle with innovative thinking, problem solving, and really those core aspects of what we want to do in the workplace. So there is so much more than personal productivity, which is many times where we started talking about AI in the workplace, personal productivity, we can do things in a different way. There is so much more, but personal productivity is important. And it really is a people conversation. Because if you can get 10 hours back in a month, which is a low number, what would you be able to do with that?
You know, it's interesting. I don't know, like exactly, like what would I do with the extra 10 hours?
Yeah.
Because basically I don't feel like I would get it. I would fill it with more stuff, right? And this is one of those things I think that people who are into this stuff, they've said to me, you know, it's supposed to make me more productive, but it's just like, I'm obsessed. I just spend more time doing more things, creating more, you know, and then they take on more responsibility. And so that's one question I wanted to ask you. How do we do it? Like, how do we like step away, or how do we step in, or whatever we have to do? Because if you ask AI, right, like I've asked you, like, what do I need today? You know, it'll be say like, make sure you take time for rest and relaxation, or whatever. It knows, you know, whatever. But we don't do it, right? Then we're into the next thing. So how do we do that? And then the other thing is that the AI doesn't need to rest, does it? It's like silicon base is getting fed with energy all the time. We're cyclical. We, you know, human beings, right? We sleep and we
do?
Yeah.
What?
So how does all that work? Tell me.
There are a lot of great questions, because also what we can see when you save this kind of time, what do you do with it? A lot of people do put it back into productive work, maybe creating new ideas. We can see that the most innovative and high ROI users of generative AI, no matter which solution they're on, they're saying I can focus on more fulfilling work. I can do focus on the most important work. I can be more creative and really spend the time. So we see that they're often reutilizing that time into what matters most. You can get out of the busy work, those things that you don't love about your work, and that gives you more energy. So yes, you can do more with less in this way, but also it's actually not a bad thing to take time back. There are so many studies over the years that we've seen, for instance, the 4-day working week.
Oh, right, yeah. That's been a big
increased productivity and better outcomes, better bottom line results. But people are like, how are we going to enable this?
Yeah.
Hey, generative AI could be a very good option to enable the 4-day working week.
If I say, okay, AI, how to help me do a 4-day work week or whatever, a 4-hour work week or whatever, how would that, what do you think I would get as a solution? And do you think I could live my life that way?
I think for sure when we look forward in time, we will be reducing the amount of time we're working.
Yeah.
And that is a really hard thing for many people to perceive. And also, AI is not here to replace us. No, people working with AI might replace those who are not working with AI. So that's the short-term aspect of it. But as we move forward, agentic AI is taking more and more space, which is maybe a word that not many people are familiar with.
Yeah,
but agentic AI is when we think about all business processes, we'll have an agent that can both do things smarter in how they retrieves information, but it can actually also do things on behalf of us. When we can remove the busy work with AI, that's where we can create magic. And think about human ingenuity. I will always come back to that topic here, that we can actually focus on that one. What is the core of your strengths? If you remove all those annoying admin tasks, those things that you don't love, and you say, hey, AI, you can be my co-pilot, go and do that for me. Well, what can you focus on? And actually reducing that time will feel natural. For instance, I've been working like this for over 2 years now. And if I would lose my co-pilot, my AI solution, I would probably need to be at least 2 Ninas to be able to keep up with what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to think about that one. I haven't reduced my workload.
I was going to just say how many hours.
I'll be honest about that one, because I'm so passionate,
Right.
but I could reduce it if I wanted to. And I could stop, but what I do with my time is, because we're in such a cool point of time right now, I spend more there.
Yeah.
My employer wins, I win, and I do believe that Sweden wins as well on this one. But it's going to be a lot of leadership here. What we want to shape it, why we should be doing this. If we don't lean in and look at this and really see it as a new way of working, then we might be in problems here.
You brought up 2 things that came up during our first, pre-discussion. One was this idea of the that when we're working, what we're doing, right? And like there's this whole idea of like AI is so good at art, music, writing, all this kind of stuff. So the creative side, is it taking all that? That's one. And the other one that came up for me when you were just speaking was the whole Sweden thing, and where we stand as a country from Sweden, because we're transmitting from Sweden, and what that can look like in the future. So those 2 things come up. So I guess the first is, if you think about art and music and writing and all this kind of stuff that AI is really good at, how do people do those creative things in the future? How does that look?
I want to pull it back to what is your core strength, your vision, because yes, in somewhat we feel like, oh my God, AI is doing things I'm doing.
Yeah.
But you take a step back and you think about, okay, you can still have your vision. And instead of maybe doing all of the things the same way you used to do them, you now are like, oh, AI, put that there, do this. No, increase that one or decrease that one, or etc. So here we can see new kind of creativity, and it will be different.
Yes, so you become more like a director bringing in people, or a
Yeah.
conductor.
So
right?
your
So you have
vision
a
can be
whole-
in focus.
Ah, interesting. That's the first time I've heard that perspective. Most people get defensive and they say, oh, we should not let, it take our, intellectual property. Or the other is, we should be free and just let things happen the way they are. But this idea that you're going to work differently, yes, but that you're like a conductor or a director of many, a whole new kind of partner to work with. That's interesting perspective. I like that.
Can I share another one
Yeah.
that I often use? And that's
Yeah.
actually the example of translators.
All right.
Because translating is something that generative AI does really well.
Yeah.
Today we see that it's translators using AI that can give even better, quicker outcomes together. So as the models are getting better, the translations are getting better, the translator occupation is really going to see a big shift there.
Yeah.
Because we have translation of text, we also have natural language directly now. Even in Teams meetings, you can just translate a person live in their own voice. That's really cool.
That's cool, huh?
But then you think about, the translators, what are they going to be doing? Actually, one step back, we think about it, and what translators do extremely well is take a perspective from someone from one culture and one voice with another perspective and connect them. And if you lean into that one and don't focus on, I'm going to translate your words here, but I'm going to translate the connection between people, that's a very, I would say, natural way for the translator occupation to move beyond.
Right.
But you have to lean in. You have to start using these services. You have to start thinking about how to change your game, otherwise you will fall behind.
Yeah.
And this, you were alluding a little bit to it, the Swedish situation, or actually the Nordic situation. We're seeing now that Sweden is falling behind on the use of generative AI.
Really?
Nordics as well.
Because you think of this as really a tech center, certainly in Europe,
Yeah.
and then maybe even in the world, right? It's one of those tech centers here that we have in Scandinavia, but
But this isn't so much a tech conversation.
No.
It's a shift in the way we work. And we also have a tendency to sometimes think, it sounds like a tech conversation, let's give it to IT. But here we need business leaders to step up. Here we need leaders to say, this is where we're going, this is why we're going. And we actually see the AI power users in Sweden, they are 70% more likely to have heard from their CEO about the importance of challenging themselves and working with generative AI.
Yeah.
So the why, the communication of it, that's a leadership conversation. And then we need to train people.
yeah.
What does this mean? And also the tough conversations. What are you going to be doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Well, lean in and you will be shaping the future.
Yeah, rather than sort of complaining about this new thing that's
Yeah.
come in. Yeah, that's always been the way with any technology, right? People complain and then they get lost. They say that science advances on the death of the old people that were running their things because they have their set ideas and their set concepts that they've developed over time, and they don't want to lose those. We all know that flexibility needs to be there, right? And change and see what's happening. But this is changing so quickly that people are like, whoa, like how do you become an AI expert? It's only been like 2 years, right? Or something like that, or whatever, that since ChatGPT became public, let's say, or something, maybe it's a little longer now. And like, how do you become so good at it? What do you do? What do you have to do? Is it playing with the tools? Is it trying stuff, or
I think exactly that. Curiosity, being able to be curious, open-minded, and accept that you are not going to be an expert. You don't have to know everything to try. Play around with it. We see very common denominators with those who are AI power users, the highest ROI users of generative AI. We see that they start the day with generative AI, they end the day with generative AI. They also experiment, where they say, I'm going to stop, pause, and think, could I do this differently in partnership with generative AI?
Yeah.
And to be honest, it doesn't take much. to be there, to get there. It's more of a mind shift.
Yeah.
And this is where I think we're in a very interesting point in time as well, because we're rewriting the rules of everything right now. And those who lean in will be the winners. And it's not about how tech savvy you are, if you're a super user of all the tools, or if you come from a tech background. This is a revolution that belongs to anyone who wants in. And I am actually worried about Sweden because we are 12 points behind the global average of using.
Really? I mean,
12
that's just
points.
shocking, yeah.
And all the reports, depending on which one you look at, information workers, frontline workers, we are behind. And
What
it's
do we
not
do?
just
How do we
we wake up.
wake up and get on your
Wake up, realize that it's not that hard. It's a way of working. If anything, there are so many things to learn, and there are many courses, many opportunities to do so, but just saying it's okay to not be an expert. And I'm hearing more and more words about AI shame. Oh, I missed the train, we're 2.5 years in, and everyone's talked about it so long. I haven't figured this out yet.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Invite everyone in. Training, training, training. Leadership and communication. And just get started.
Yeah, because the tools are changing and becoming more accessible as well, right?
Yeah.
So before, when ChatGPT first came out and people started using this regular, that was like you had to type, you had to be in front of your computer, but now you got it in your phone, you got different types of, let's say, skins or faces or AI agents, like you mentioned, that can then connect with you. If you want to make music, you can do one thing in a whole different kind of environment, and if you want to make some art, you can do it in a whole nother environment, right? So those things are going very quickly. So you don't have to be like an AI business person to use it to make your life better. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to be curious
Yeah.
and stop, pause, and think. And that's a lot about leaders as well. Not just executive leaders who needs to communicate the vision and why, but also for all managers, empower your leaders to be like, hey, how are you rethinking your everyday work? How is it transforming and shifting? And having those conversations, which is very basic human conversations. But we are actually seeing another thing, if I may share.
Yeah.
I love data points.
Yeah.
So we are behind on using generative AI in Sweden, but I haven't found any country yet who have higher numbers of shadow IT in the AI era. Bring your own AI is becoming something we're talking more and more about. That actually 86% of generative AI users in Sweden bring their own tools to work.
Okay.
And I love the curiosity that people are leaning in. They want to get to know generative AI. They're experimenting with tools, but it's actually a business risk when you bring consumer tools into the workplace.
Yeah.
And with that, I love the curiosity. We should lean into that, but we also need to understand what are the needs of our employees and how do we give them tools that are safe and proper for work. Because here, if you put business data into a consumer service, that might be a real business risk. And we're very high. I haven't seen any country higher up. And that is coming back to the leadership, that we haven't taken a stance on this one. We haven't given tools to our employees, but they're demanding it, they need it.
Yeah. I remember very clearly, I've been a creative for a long time, and my home computer many years ago became better than anything I got in any production company I was working with or whatever. And so then it was just like, I'll just use my stuff, right? And now with AI, I mean, if you have, especially your way of working, or if you have your own, you've kind of trained your AI to work with you, you don't want to go in and have a work one. So how is that gonna play out, you think?
Actually, at work, generative AI knows you. Knows your working documents, your processes, your context at work out of the box, and it will also grow with you.
Isn't that a little scary too, though? Because then the kind of powers that be know when you're like making music instead of whatever you're supposed to be doing or whatever.
So I'm not an expert of all the creative solutions that you might be thinking about, but when we look at the business solutions, it's the information that people already know about you. It's your scope of your role, what are you hired to do, what's your calendar like, what meetings are you going, who are you collaborating with. It's not something new, but when you give access to the generative AI models, it can give you better outcomes, better answers, and it also grows with you. And then of course there are the consumer versions of this as well. I mean, use consumer tools, but use them for consumer purposes. I think we should play around with all the spectrum of generative AI solutions, but we should do so in mind, knowing what solution is suitable for what. And then just have fun with it. They will grow, they will also develop with us. So if we all demand the same kind of solution or development of a solution, it will come because things are moving very fast. And at least when we're talking about our roadmap, we try to always build what people are requesting and asking for. Always people-centric.
Always. And so that could be my last question. What's the future for people?
The future for people. I think it's a very important question. The essence of what I think we are in is a people shift, as maybe you can tell by the conversation. In the future, I see that we will be spending less time on busy work. We will focus on the things that we enjoy more. Our inner essence, on human ingenuity, our creativity. We will meet more in focused groups and focus on what can we create. And this is really what we in Sweden are super strong at. Innovation, new ideas. But we get bogged down in the detail. So offloading there, and I also think we will work less. So we can have a better balance, but it's gonna be a lot of tough questions now on how do we shape it? What do we want this to be like? And that's why we need to lean in and lead so that we can shape this in the best way for us.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Nina, for talking to me. It's fantastic. So interesting. I can't wait to talk to you again on one of these. Really good. Thank you.
So thank you for listening, and see you at SIME.
Yes. SIME Perspectives is written and produced by Roland Williams and Gary Fabry. Share your perspectives with Gary Fabry on LinkedIn or Instagram. Support comes from Innovation Pioneers, the collective learning network for innovation capabilities, Epicenter, the power of community scaling ideas into impact, and the SIME Conference, exploring tech, business, and humanity together.